The topic I chose for my final paper was maximizing the human capital element through human resources. I realized that each area that we studied in class came back to the people within the organization. That equals human capital, and HR just seemed like a natural choice when trying to tie the course together for me. Um, Maybe it's because I'm exploring that maybe as a possibility for my own career progression. But I learned a great deal about the strategic moves and the influence that human resources could have on a company if it's developed properly by leadership. By our textbook, human capital is defined as the productive potential of one's knowledge and actions. Um, Many within an organization, um, many actions, really roles that fall under an organization, they end up in HR's hands. They're the ones that are handling the people for the most part, whether it's uncomfortable work that no one else wants to do when it comes to counseling, hiring, firing, or whether it's even setting up trainings and making sure the requirements are met. For an executive who sees the value in developing one of the most expensive resources they have, when you consider the costs of benefits, the cost of salaries, the costs of other things that are given for employees, it makes sense that they would include the human resources management team and people that work with that to the roundtable when they're discussing strategic development of a company. Leadership's focus on organizational commitment and enhancing employee engagement is best served by having an engaged human resource program with HR managers that are well versed and also well placed within a company. HR can't be in an office by itself and not actually interacting with the people, much like some companies do. Some companies do put HR in a corner and they don't have them actively involved with their people, so they're underutilizing a resource that they could be developing. The rise of strategic importance of HR is even more emphasized by the studies, just like these classes and some other reasons that companies are now realizing how much of an impact the HR can have on their companies. The beginning of HR itself goes back to the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, whenever there was issues with war, staffing, people being gone, having to fill roles, and it was mainly the hiring of the employees, making sure the role everybody was filled, not so much in developing employees, but more from a protective standpoint, considering that there are women and children in the workforce. HR filled a role for that. It was almost reactionary. Their rise of labor unions and that sort of thing took place after that too, and HR was involved in making sure the requirements for that were met. HR has always focused on the people of the company. There has always been an ebb and tide in attitudes when it came to the necessity of HR by management. It seems like when things are going good, companies are like, what does HR do for us anyway? But when companies are not doing good, all of a sudden HR has a lot more influence on where can we get the people we need and what can we do better. So success in a company is rarely attributed to a strong HR department, but taking care of the human capital is something that needs to be done all the time. Some of the roles that HR now has that involves the people within a company would be rewards, compensation, benefits, pensions, resourcing, recruiting, employee relations, organizational design and development, training and development of systems, policies, and procedures. Managers that need training to work with their people will go to HR to get that. Counseling, coaching, guiding, these are all resources that human resource managers have and can provide to managers that might be struggling and working with their people. Human resources does deal with the disciplinary and legal issues that could cause negative publicity if handled poorly. That's another part of HR that deals with people, making sure that everybody is covered from the corporate side. And another reason that strategically the corporate personnel should be involved with HR. The evaluation of the current state, future state desired, and the roadmap to achieve these goals should be paired with the available human resources in a company and planning on matching if there's skills that the company doesn't have. HR is a vital part of this. From the hiring part to the onboarding part, HR is the first face that a new employee for a company sees when they come in the door. It is important that HR sets the right tone, sets the expectations of integrity or any other values or ethical important things that should be considered by employees. If HR doesn't do a good job of setting this precedence, then it's going to be a struggle for a new employee to find where they go. On the other hand, if a strong message, strong view of the culture, if all of those messages are received by the new employee and they embrace it, then they're going to start the company with some dedication and be committed to the goals that HR explains to them. Change is most often associated with crisis or another significant event that would deem changes in company policies or that sort of thing. This is where HR comes in as well. If there's regulatory changes, legal changes, things like that change the message that leadership needs to send out or strategies that are currently in place, HR representatives are going to be available to the employees to make sure that they understand the changes. Just like any other change in a company, there has to be an ongoing effort to show that this is continual and not just a one-time development. The message of communicating the changes has to be felt throughout the company, and HR is the one that has the most influence on all the that has the most communication routes to all of the departments. The source of a successful company is more than just a financial bottom line these days. A progressive movement has taken over with the generational shift in employees to understand how important an HR department or a human resource manager that's talented can have on a company. There's no better place to look for a transformation of employee requirements than a human resource manager, and they should be included in the strategic vision and goals of a company. The workforce is competitive. If a company is not supporting what an employee needs and giving them what they need, they're going to go elsewhere, and that's resources that are going to have to be spent to replace that worker that just left because their needs weren't being met by a company. This is a place where HR can come in and can be the difference in a successful company or an unsuccessful company. That's what I focused on for most of my paper. There were some other details to it, but that's the main gist of it. So, thanks.